Leadership Story Talks, where we discuss the practices that engage, motivate, develop, retain, and attract people to businesses. We'll give you principles and tools based on real-world stories to leverage listening and storytelling to become a better leader and management professional. Leadership Story Talks is produced by Narativ, a company that focuses on personal storytelling for business.
Well, obviously storytelling works everywhere from a leadership perspective, but there are two spaces where I'm very deliberate to talk to leaders about that. One is as we're introducing a change and we're inviting our people to engage in a change, there's envisioning or storytelling that says, why are we at this point? And what can I see in the future that represents why we would go through this change? So that's a very strategic storytelling to invite people to engage in the change. And then the other one, Jerome, is what you were just talking about. And that is, as we start to reach the last quartile of the change, let's use storytelling to learn and to celebrate, and then to prompt, what else could this lead to? Or what if we tried this? So we use storytelling as a way to accelerate and enhance innovation.
All right, so we are back. That was Curtis Bateman, who's been on the show now twice, and really, that quote that we just heard is all about change and storytelling, and what's the role of storytelling in change? And it was really interesting to hear him, talk about these two kind of dynamics or insights that he's seen over the years at Franklin Covey. That when you're introducing change and you're inviting people to engage in that change, you have to explain why. And being able to tell a story of what that vision is, what's going to happen beyond the change, is really critical. And then the second thing is actually what happens once you've taken all the actions, and using storytelling as a way to celebrate people, as a way to acknowledge everyone's role in that change. I thought those two sort of dimensions of storytelling were really interesting.
And during that session, we also talked about that we have to remind ourselves not to have story fatigue, because when there's change, and let's say you have large organizations, you're moving across and talking about this day, not all the messages are permeating all the levels. So we need to keep it fresh. We need to put ourselves in the listener's experience, just like when you have theater. A Broadway person will know they're going to do that play they've done many, many times, but for the audience, it's fresh. It's the first time they're experiencing. So always reminding ourselves what's new and innovative ways and consistent ways to get the message across, so it translates from where it started to the people that we are speaking with. And it's constant. It's not a one and done.
Yeah, for sure. And it reminds me of an organization that we worked with, where there's a lot of change going on, and lots of restructuring and things like that. And then a new CEO came in as well on top of all of that. So not only as those who were in the company were wondering, okay, well, now there's all this change, restructuring, now there's a new CEO. Not only are you worried about what's going to happen to my role, but then as a manager and leader of your division or team, you now also have to communicate to your own team what they can expect and how to envision things. I mean, it's sort of double stress, right? You don't know what's going to happen to you, don't really know what's going to happen to your team. And if you're honest, you're sort of like, I'm not even sure what's going to happen, 2 weeks from now, or let alone tomorrow. Maybe I'll be gone, or maybe a couple of people will be asked to go from my team. So it was interesting to kind of be in that situation, because the story that the person I was working on with landed on was actually not so much about what was going to happen, but it was more about, because he just didn't know, but it was more about what's happening right now, and trying to create a space to acknowledge that he was worried, that there was some concern, first of all, and that it was natural to have that concern given all the changes. And second, that he could, once he had acknowledged that for himself, and we were working together, hadn't spoken to his team yet, then started to emerge a possibility. Something he could start to see this whole change thing as an opportunity. And I think that's something that Curtis talks a lot about, right? And Franklin Covey, and they've got these books around, change as an opportunity. And we often, to me, it was a case in point of like, so often we're so preoccupied, concerned, worried, and naturally so. But the problem with that is that if you don't create a space for yourself to sort of just say that it's there, take a breath. Okay, yeah, I am worried. I'm worried for everybody else. I've got some fear. I've got some concern. Once you do that for yourself, just admit it, it kind of dissipates a little bit. Or at least it stops from being a complete obstacle to your ability to see what's next.
I agree. And all these pictures are coming back to you. First of all, when you said new management comes in, you've got a reasonable relationships with the executives and your teams, and everybody knows the characters. And then somebody new comes in, and you have to reintroduce yourself and the team and what you're about. And a line from a musical, another opening, another night, since I was using a theater analogy a few minutes ago. And that's it. It's like a whole new experience, a whole new story has to be created. The other point that you made, which was excellent, was to own it and to say it. And I learned this not through a case study or something that I learned in graduate school. Is I remember our organization I was part of was changing out a lot of their infrastructure, their performance, and their compensation. And the best thing I did when I was standing in front of this group, waiting for them to like throw things at me, was to own the fact we don't have all the answers. This is not picture perfect. I'm going to do my best to listen and give you a plan. And it worked because I wasn't lying or wasn't just drinking the Kool-Aid. We're
Yeah.
just being matter of fact and saying, I understand you're stressed and how is this going to play out? So I think that little bit of truth and acknowledgement goes a long way.
Yeah.
And then let's move on to what we have control of or what we have access to. It does make a big difference. And too, we want to just, speak to the PowerPoint or speak to the press release. So speak honestly for a minute and just acknowledge the human part of the experience. And I think that goes a huge long way to getting your team to come together and
Yeah.
respect what you're saying and saying, okay, at least that person's reality based and not totally delusional. So lessons from the past. And I can envision that room and people waiting for me at the end of that room afterwards. And I thought, well, what are they going to do to me? And they were like, thank you for being honest. And that was the best training lesson I ever had in my life.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, and I think the other point you said, reintroduce yourself and what you're about, because that's exactly what happened in that case. Was, he went back to the values that drove the whole organization, knowing that those were non-negotiable. So whoever the CEO was going to be, the management, et cetera, whatever changes were, those values were solid, and so he was able to tell a story around one of those values to his team. And and yeah, similar reaction to what you just described for yourself. Thanks for the honesty. Thanks for not sugarcoating stuff or not just going right to solution, which, by the way, we don't have yet. It's too soon. But there needed to be that sort of bridge, right? And I think that's the other thing that I got from this interview with Curtis is that change is not something that happens overnight. It's kind of an accumulation of things. And there are inflection points that they talk about in his books and at Franklin Covey in general. But I think that's kind of what we see as well, is that, it happens over time, and that new CEO that's coming in, they're going to need a little adaptation time, and they're going to tell a story at the beginning, and then that story might evolve, and it should evolve. And so all of these things, you kind of have to ride the wave a little bit, and be accepting of those ebbs and flows, as challenging as they are, but acknowledge when it's really hard to accept those. So yeah, I think that's what I'm taking away from this.
And the other point too is when we hear people who have the courage to speak up, they may be the people we've labeled as the crankier people in our groups or the questioning people, but we hire them to have certain skills. And sometimes they use those same skills to challenge us about what our thought process or what the organization's process. And it's not to say they're not going to get on the same page or join the team. They are seeking information and figuring out the logic or the purpose or how they fit in. So giving a space to let those things vent. And when that happens, you sometimes or us have had the best advocates and the best supporters of a change because we let that happen. We let the natural dynamics happen where somebody was questioning and critiquing and challenging. And sometimes we improved our process because we learned from those interactions now. And they make us change directions? Yes. Sometimes maybe it'd be annoying. We think we have all the answers and we've settled on something. Yes, I'm convinced of that. But at the end of the day, other people are watching how you're reacting to them. And you're going to be the beneficiary of letting some of those ideas and questions be voiced and
Yeah.
supporting.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said a space to vent and to kind of let it all out. And I think the other space to create is a space to celebrate, right? That to the point of this quote we just heard, where really that's a huge role of storytelling and especially in a moment of change, we tend to sort of say, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. This is what we need to change. These people are going to have to leave, and these new people are going to come in. But wait, hang on one second. Yes, all that is important. You got to do it, but also think of how you're communicating to your people, and starting with that celebration of what actually is working, and what's here to stay, and what we want to build on. That's an amazing message, and you can tell really fantastic stories and find people in your organization that have those stories that are worth celebrating.
And it's not about where you're saying go out and get cases of champagne, which is really nice, but on every week, but to embed moments into your meetings, to give sound bites into small wins that have happened, what people have done that were on task and on point, and just raise up things that may be not noticed otherwise, because we're never going to remember them when it comes to the end of the quarter sometimes, or the end of the year. Like, celebrate as you go, acknowledge as you go, I think, and then encourage. And other people are going to be learning and listening what's valued and what got appreciated. And I think that does help.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Anything else? Any other thoughts around this?
It's always thoughts, but we got to end this. Sure.
That's great.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
our editor's just going to cut us.
I know exactly.
Until next
exactly.
time, we'll opine more. There's always more to share.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that all brings to my mind that if you're in a situation as a leader, as a manager, as an employee, where there's a lot of change going on in your organization, and you're not quite sure what the right story is to tell, or maybe the story has to change, consider reaching out to us. Have your people reach out to our people, and look at our training programs, because it's really worth it. We always start with listening, acknowledging, as we talked about now, and then finding the right story for you to tell and helping you craft it. So if this resonates with you, go to narativ.com. That's narativ.com. Fill out our contact form there, and we'll take a look. We always look at everything, so we're always ready to listen. And thanks, of course, for listening and watching here. One more thing I'll say is that if you haven't subscribed to this podcast, go wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure you subscribe and leave a review, because that drives the word of mouth. And of course, always go to narativ.com/podcast. That's where you'll find all of our previous episodes as well. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jules, once again, for being here. And
Yes.
yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I love these little debriefs and lessons learned. So much to learn from.
And remember, everybody needs a sounding board. So
That's
just
right.
go and ask for some guidance and feedback. It'll make a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. And until next time, bye-bye.
For more information on the narrative listening and storytelling method and how it can help your business, go to narativ.com.